I'm sorry, but there's nothing we can do. This is what people being diagnosed with ALS or motor neuron disease hear. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, is a disease in which the brain cells in charge of our movement die. This means that people get progressively paralyzed and unable to do things like walk, talk, and eventually breathe, usually as quickly as 2 to 5 years after diagnosis. Our movement relies on our brain cells communicating well between themselves to be able to tell the rest of our body what to do. This happens in what we call synapses, small intricate structures in which two brain cells, or a brain cell and a muscle cell, are in very close proximity to one another so they can send each other messages. One of the first things that stop working in ALS are those synapses. My work aims to understand what goes wrong with them. However, synapses are minuscule and very, very delicate, which means studying them using normal microscopy techniques isn't possible. Also, we have more synapses in our brains than there are stars in our galaxy, and they look like stars too. What you see in the slide isn't the universe, but indeed synapses in a human brain. Those big blue blobs are cell nuclei, and each green spot is a synapse. I took that image using array tomography, a new imaging technique that allows us to study synapses in great detail, both in structure and in composition, as well as allowing a computer to count them for you, which, given their vast number, is very, very handy. I am using that technique to study two main things. First, I want to see if there is synapse loss and if the areas where that occurs correlate with the symptoms we see in patients. That is, whether there is more synapse loss in the motor part of the brain than, say, the visual one. Secondly, in 97% of ALS cases, a particular protein forms little tangles that float around the cell and get in the way of normal cell function. I aim to study if these tangles are present in the synapses, that's what makes them dysfunctional, and if they are, whether they can jump from one cell to another, therefore killing more cells. If that's the case, stopping this spread could hold disease progression, slow down the symptoms, and provide the patients with the treatment and the hope they so desperately need. So, next time you look at the starry sky, remember the galaxy we all have in our brains and what can happen when our stars stop shining. My name's Anna. I'm a third year PhD student, and what you just heard was the talk that helped me win the University of Dundee's 2021 3-minute thesis competition. Bit of background about me: I was born and raised in Barcelona, and when I was young, I lost my granddad to ALS. So I was personally told that there was nothing that we, or in this case, I, could do. And even as a child, I was stubborn enough to decide I would prove them wrong and I would do something about it. And that something was research. That's why I studied biomedical sciences back home and then moved to Scotland to study a master's in neuroscience and then start my PhD here in Dundee. All throughout, I've always been very interested in science communication and outreach because I've always been quite vocal about my experience, and I realized that not a lot of people knew what ALS was, and the ones that did was because they either lost someone to it or their friend had lost someone to it. This shocked me because the lifetime risk of someone getting ALS is around 1 in 300. This means 200 people are diagnosed each year in Scotland. Now, if you ask me, those are some major numbers. There's around 400 people living with MND in Scotland at any one time. And the only reason this number might not seem too high, it's because of the devastating nature of this disease and the short life expectancy after diagnosis. This is a disease that progressively paralyzes people, while most of them are fully aware of their situation, and there's no cure or effective treatment. And not a lot of people know about this. that kind of instilled in me the importance of outreach and awareness. Then things came along like the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, and that gave it even more importance. So, in the middle of the pandemic, while we were stuck at home and we couldn't do any experiments because the lab was closed, my supervisor sent me a link to the 3 minute thesis and said, "Hey, you might want to give that a go." So I did, and it was like a switch flipped. And I had so much fun preparing it and thinking about it and reflecting on my research and how to condense it into this 3 minute short piece. I have to admit, it was also very humbling. Condensing 3 years worth of research in 3 minutes with no technical words, it's more challenging than you'd think. But I've learned a lot. I gained so much more confidence and gotten so much better at my public speaking skills. So overall, I'd say it was an amazing experience. The training provided by the university also really helped a lot. I was runner up on 2020, so when 2021 came along, I decided to run again, and this time I won. So, I'm an example of if first you don't succeed, try and try again. But even if you don't, you still have so much more to gain from the experience of participating and the knowledge you're going to get from it. I also think that if last year and a half has taught us something, is that the importance of how crucial good science communication and good communication skills overall are. You never know when the public are going to need to gain knowledge on science or a virus or economics or the environment and climate change. So it's very important that we gain those skills on how to communicate whatever we research to the general public. I also would like to acknowledge that this talk is all about me, but I could not have gotten here without the help and funding I'm lucky enough to have. I'm a charity funded PhD student, so that means that the Ian MacDonald Centre funds my PhD and my stipend. M&D Scotland funds part of the research going on in our lab, and part of the equipment we use was half funded by Alzheimer's Research UK. As you can see, our work is very heavily charity funded, and those funds come from the general public and their donations. This further highlights the importance of researchers and scientists being able to communicate whatever we do to everyone and be open about it and explaining it in a way that's engaging, trustworthy, clear, relatable, and never patronizing. So overall, I think that the 3 minute thesis is a fantastic experience. There are so many skills that can be learned from it and are useful to everyone at any stage of their careers. And I would highly encourage if there's any PhD students in the audience to participate or to try again if you already did last year. And if there are any supervisors who have PhD students, please let them know that this exists. The university and the Doctoral Academy did a wonderful job organizing this, and they made the experience very smooth sailing, and the training opportunities were also very, very helpful. So I hope I've inspired some of you to participate. If you have any questions about my experience during the 3 minute thesis competition or my research or anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm always happy to chat. Thank you.